Hi, welcome to PunchlineGloucester.com and Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And we really couldn't do the show without them. Okay, let's meet the panel. Today we've got Andrew Hearn. He's the newly appointed head of place for Gloucester City Council. We'll find out more about his background and what the job entails, and also his first impressions of the city of Gloucester. We've got Athila Roos. He's the owner of Holy Spirits and a wine agent based in Nailsworth, Fountain Street. He's a specialist merchant of whiskies, fine wines, spirits, and as a wine agent, he looks after private clients and fine wine and spirit collections and investments. So I'm really looking forward to finding all about that as well. We've got Marc Begg. He's the managing director of Cirencester Fabrication Services. Mark bought the business during the height of the pandemic, increased sales in the first year of 20%. I remember talking to you then, Mark. My goodness, it was quite a scary time as well. So we'll find out how the company is doing now, ever increasing price of raw materials, energy, staffing costs, and what's next? What is he doing next? He never stops still. Finally, never last not least, we have Sam Holliday, Business Development Manager of the Federation of Small Business, ex-editor of the Bath Chronicle, representing SMEs from Gloucestershire in the southwest region. And hopefully you're not underwater there in Gloucester where you live. Thank goodness for that. Okay, guys, let's have a look at what's making the headlines before we start. Okay, justice is done, but our hearts are broken, says the Metro. The Mirror, Leafer's life mattered, her legacy will live on. The Financial Times, BP's under fire, boss cuts 4,700 jobs in fight to revive shares. The Guardian, no Israel vote on deal until Hamas agrees to all terms, says the Guardian. The Daily Mail, Labour's blasted over toothless grooming probes. The Daily Express, why aren't you wanting to find out the real truth? The Eye, UK army now too small to play a major peacekeeping role in Ukraine. The Times, looser loan rules could get economy on the move. The Sun, lock them up again. And the Daily Star, don't you just love it? YMCA will save the world. Thank goodness for the Daily Star, I tell you, for a bit of light on it, because it's all doom and gloom like normal. Okay, Sam, let's start with you today, please. What have you picked out from the papers?
Well, I was a bit surprised, to be honest, Mark, because I was driving around a bit yesterday for work and I had the radio on quite a lot, and all they were talking about was Israel and Palestine and the Gaza and the possible peace treaty. Got home, put the national news on. It was all over the place. So I kind of expected this morning there'd only be one story in the papers, but I went through the front pages there, and only one of them had got it on their front page. And I've got the Times here and had to go to page 24 to find it. And I was quite surprised about that, really. And I do wonder whether people just think we can't cope anymore with these big stories and these big international events that are happening in the war and so forth, like Ukraine and Israel. But I do think it's important from a local business point of view about these stories because, as you just hinted there, there's not much good news out there. There's a lot of businesses very worried, confidence is very low, and even, I say even something as big as this, it can change the mood. I remember when the Ukraine war started, local businesses were worried about it, and they're thinking, why would you be worried about Ukraine? But of course it does. It affects global confidence, and when global confidence is low, people stop spending money. They start getting very nervous about taking people on. And so these big stories that you might think, well, that's a million miles away from the businesses, but it affects every single business. They worry about their supply chain. They worry about the money that's going to be coming in. And it's just about that feel good factor. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't remember the last thing that lifted the nation, in terms of a feel good. And that affects people as well as business. So when I heard all the stories going on yesterday, and there's a possible peace deal, I thought, well, at last we've got some good news, and people can at least start to think about positive things positively. But very, very low key coverage in the press today, which does surprise me slightly. So yeah, that one really caught my eye. The lack of the coverage caught my eye rather than the coverage, if you see what I mean. So quite a surprise, really.
Okay, I've got to ask you, did Trump coming on board, has he helped get it over the line? What do you reckon?
Well, I don't know really, but I suspect one of the sides in the party didn't really want to deal with Trump and wanted to get a deal signed out before he could get his hands on it. So all the talk on the radio and whatever has been that the sides have kind of joined together and talked to the relevant parties that will listen to them. So maybe it's a bit of a joint effort, but one way or another, whether you're a small business in Gloucestershire or whether you're somebody living in that dreadful part of the world as it feels at the moment, this has got to be good news, and anything that's good news internationally will filter through. So I'm really just hoping whoever's got it done, let's just hope it gets done.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Sam. Andrew, let's bring you in. Really nice to meet you at long last. We've had a few chats on the phone and a few email bits and pieces going back and forth. We picked out from the papers.
Well, like Sam said, I think I looked across the papers, and I generally do every day, and unfortunately, the news is always littered with with big negativity, and I think some of that negativity we need to try and turn and learn from, and one story that is across every paper today. Is the tragic death of Elaine Adam, who obviously was stabbed to death in a tragic incident. And I think for me, what it does is it comes back to this point again that, and I feel very passionately about this, and I always have done, is that knife crime, violence across the UK it's a systemic problem, and it is one that is not going away. If anything, it's getting harder to deal with. It's getting more fraught. It's to some respects, it's uncontrollable, despite all of the good work that forces do across the UK, local governments do, central governments trying to do. There's a lot of great initiatives out there that people are trying to rally and galvanize behind, but ultimately there is still a significant threat on our streets today. Where gone are the days where you might get into the odd punch up or the odd brawl and you'd walk home with a bit of a cut or a bruise. Nowadays, you're at general risk of losing your life to somebody who is slightly misguided and is carrying what could be just as hard, a kitchen knife, for instance. And so, I think for me, the reason I really resonate on this story is, one, I think it's a tragic story that needs to be told, and I think that there is a lot of empathy behind this story, but there's a lot of learning that we need to continue to evolve and work with. And I suppose in my new role, for Gloucester and as head of place, which we'll touch on later, there's a lot of initiatives already happening across Gloucestershire to try and reduce the level of knife crime, reduce the level of violence. But I would also like to add and build on this within, looking at how we design inclusivity within our streets, safety and well-being within our streetscapes in the public realm, because a lot of the time, this tragic incident actually just happened on a busy street. Okay, it's not in a dark corridor or a dark corner of the streetscape. It's actually in a busy street in front of people going to work in the morning. So the risk factor to someone doing this and the consequences, there's just not enough to stop people with this kind of hatred. So I think for me, it's that there is still more to do, and that's not me saying that people aren't doing what they can, central government aren't doing what they can, local governments, police forces. There's so much out there with the right people behind it, trying to stop this kind of hatred, violence, and knife crime that's just littering our streets. But I think for me, I'm really, really focused on working with young people across Gloucestershire and Gloucester within my remit, really focused on trying to design our streetscapes and our environments so that there is an increased level of safety and well-being across the city, and ultimately trying to make it safer for people. We have a young population, particularly in Gloucester. We have a student population. People want to feel safe. You want to go and educate yourself. You want to go to work. You want to go enjoy yourself. You don't want to be at fear constantly of saying the wrong thing or being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody pulling a knife out on you. So I think this is a tragic story. It's one that needs to be told. It's one that can't get lost. The story of Elena and others who have been victims to knife crime. There's been plenty of people across the last decade and longer who've been a victim of knife crime. We need to continue to tell that story, and we need to continue to find ways to tackle this, because quite frankly, it's not getting any easier and it isn't going away.
Okay, no, thanks ever so much. Really well put there as well. And obviously, I know that Sam and I would be really interested in talking to you about that further as well, obviously, what's going on. Funny enough, it was brought out in the Fast Host meeting when I was there, the launch of it, about safety for the staff and things like that. And there were issues being raised to the council then. I don't know if you know about that already, Andrew. So love to talk to you about that a bit more. Okay, Athila, let's bring you in if that's okay. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
From the Times, there is a overworked young staff signed off with stress, which I guess actually connects to both what Sam and Andrew mentioned. Sam mentioning the dark, gloomy, constant stories that we hear on a daily basis, we see on a daily basis, and of course that added up to economic conditions and everything else, adding to people's stress, knife crime on the streets. Again, it is mostly very young people that are into it. So a combination of how you look into it, stress, people being overworked, people being underpaid, cost of living, all of that adding to how more and more people are feeling the pinch in many different ways, whether that's financial, whether that is mental health, and it affects everyone. It doesn't affect just young people. Of course, I'm sure it affects all the five of us in different ways. It is important that the mental health issue at least is being brought forward more and more, and people started to talk about it, especially men are particularly bad at talking about how we feel and stuff like that. So it's important that that's becoming perhaps more central to the general conversation. How basically we are all a bit more stressed as well, obviously due to financial constraints, and you've got the cost of living that affects businesses, affects small businesses, affects everyone on a regular basis, and how that has built up massively over the last 3 or so years. We used to have inflation of 2% a year, and then suddenly we were having 10%. And as much as we're back down to whatever 2.5% on an annual basis, that is 2.5% at the end of a huge scale that has gone up. So we don't feel that it's slowing down anything. It has slowed down, but it's at a height that affects everyone in a very negative way. And sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, and also young people, it's pressure from social media as well. Let's be honest about it. I think it's got a big part to play in the mental health of the country. And I'd like to see what Australia has done. They've stopped young people from viewing Facebook and all the rest of the social media. I'd like to see it done in this country. I really do. I think it's having a real detrimental effect on the well-being of young people. And we are just at the tip of an iceberg here. Thanks ever so much for that. Let's move on to you, Mark. Mark, great to see you again, mate. What have you picked out for us, please?
I have a slightly happier one as such from that. So coming from an engineering background, I always look for things that are related to the engineering, to construction, to whatever it is on there. And one thing that I particularly love is the repurposing of technology. And I've picked up here in the Telegraph, there is a story about regulation changes from the Department for Health and Social Care, and it's around hearing aids. So in the country at the moment, if you want a hearing aid, have a slight loss of hearing, you need to have a prescription to be able to go and get it, and you get a specialist hearing aid, and there's costs and there's everything else involved. The changes in the regulation mean that companies like Apple and their earbuds, and other companies and just standard headphones, are able to actually start to convert those into hearing aids themselves. Now, we know that they have microphones and everything else in them already. And so by a small tweak of software, they can actually start converting those as cheap alternatives that people already have in their pocket, to be able to help people that are hard of hearing in everyday life. So I love that type of technology reuse and repurposing.
Topics are fantastic. I haven't heard of that one at all, Mark. I know, great stuff. Okay, well, we'll kind of finish off the newspapers there for now. Let's go back over to you, Sam. And I'd like to talk to you about national insurance contributions, the coming down the tracks in April. A lot of the businesses I'm talking to are really, really worried about it. Obviously, you deal with the smaller end of the scale. What's it looking like for you? What are they telling you?
Well, I think I've already hinted the confidence is low, and you're right at the lower, the smaller scale, self-employed people, one-man bands, they're not going to be affected by the national insurance increases. However, they're conscious of the fact that the bigger businesses they supply are going to be hit, and when bigger businesses get hit, then they have to look at their costs. So everybody is involved. So even the smallest of business is nervous because the businesses that they work with are going to be cutting costs, and it's difficult. And at the start of the year, I've been to a couple of events and things, and there's people who are really trying to go for it. They're really saying we're going to really go for it this year. But there's this thing hanging over everybody. I think it's April the 1st when it comes into effect with the minimum wage coming in. The national insurance, particularly, is the one that everybody's talking about. And I think it's a difficult time at the moment. There's no getting away from it. That nobody feels particularly good, which is why I kind of highlighted that at the start about we need some good news. And I think we need some good news from the government as well. Without going down the political line, there's not much feeling that at the moment that the government is a pro-business government. And that does, I'm not talking about any shades of political colour here. I'm not interested in that from this point of view. It's about the perception. And the perception is that maybe it's not a pro-business government, and it needs to do something about that, because that's a hard thing to shift. And a lot of businesses are very nervous now. They were probably quite happy to see a change of government in the sense that they felt there was problems before, but any enthusiasm for something new seems to be diminishing. So I think we all need a lift. We all need a lift from that to the international news we talked about earlier, but we need something nationally as well, because come April, it's a bit of a sword of Damocles, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Because the problem is that if you've got to put up your cost base, there's only two ways to get that money back, and one is to vastly increase what you're selling things for, or is to cut staff, and we don't want to get into that cycle again. So not an easy time, Mark. Not an easy time.
Okay, thanks ever so much. I'm going to bring Mark in this, obviously, because he employs a lot of people across 3 different sites, and of course the cost of energy, national insurance. What's it? You don't have to give me specific numbers, Mark, but what we're looking at here for you.
Yeah, when the budget came out, we obviously had a look at it with the financial team, and it's a big effect off the bottom line overnight. So, companies that have a low margin style companies, all of a sudden 1 or 2% off your bottom line is a big thing. So whether that's £10,000 off your bottom line or £100,000 off your bottom line, this is an expense. Well, it's an expense that comes off that no one planned for. So for us, it's a case of, do we hire more staff? It's as simple as that. Can we afford the staff that we have? And if we do keep it on, we need to be passing these costs on to the consumer. And whether that's us or whether it's the restaurant industry or other bits, all of these costs have to be passed on somewhere, because we're not sitting here and just go, oh, we can easily write off, hundreds of thousands of pounds or tens of thousands of pounds.
The big thing for me also is about young people. I'm really worried that the minimum wage going up is going to actually stop companies employing young people, because suddenly they have the same value as someone who's 21, 22. But let's be honest, they don't have the same life skills or the same.
The CEO of Next just
Next
mentioned that he's on the radio this morning saying exactly that. He's worried for the young generation of being able to step into these first-time roles, because the minimum wage is such that companies are looking at how they can afford to take people on or not take people on.
Yeah.
Especially apprentices. Let's be honest about it. It's a huge cost to take on an apprentice, and you don't know whether the kids are going to stay with you at the end of it. Anyway,
yeah.
Before it was a way to invest in your company, employ someone a little bit cheaper, let's be honest, or as they learnt the trade. Now they're going to be the same cost as everything. I mean, I'm really worried about that as well. Government talks about great talk about let's growth, employment, young people, but I just think it's really bad. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll come back to you, Mark, in a minute about your actual business. Andrew, let's bring you back in if that's okay. Love to find out about your head of place job. So, it's head of place. What's your role, if you don't mind? You know, for those that don't know, welcome to Gloucester, by the way. How long have you
Thank
been in
you.
position?
So I've been in now for just coming into 6 weeks, so I'm still fresh. Yeah, the question of what is head of place is a question I've been asking for the last sort of 10 years, because place and placemaking is a term that's used widely across multiple industries. But I suppose from my point of view, and actually just dragging back one point on the previous conversation, because I didn't want to interrupt, but I think there is also, and I will talk about it in a minute, there is also an impact of the national insurance side of it, where we might actually start moving to higher cost contractors than hiring direct people, because obviously you can then start to look at your workflow model and who you've got on the books. And that actually disincentivizes businesses to employ people, particularly apprentices, and bring them through that work chain. So, and this is a live discussion I'm having at the minute, which is why I raise it. But I think, yeah, so my role, I've probably got one of the best roles. In my opinion, I've got one of the best roles that someone can have. And I would say that, wouldn't I? But as a head of place, you are fundamentally there to navigate a city through change. And that change, so my role at Gloucester City Council looks after and is head of service for all major projects and capital projects. So how we physically change our landscape and our buildscape, how we regenerate our buildings, whether that's looking at new builds, whether that's retrofitting for a solid decarbonisation plan. That's how we regenerate the public realm, slightly touched on earlier on. I also look after the city growth and regeneration side. So, economic regeneration, economic growth. I then have a head of service role across our asset management team as well. That's new. That's something we're trialing. And I also look after our strategic planning policy team and our development planning policy team. So it's a broad role. It's a big role. And I was having this conversation yesterday with my boss, actually. He asked me, what do you love the role, or what do you love about it? And I said, you know what? Every decision that I make or the team make impacts somebody at the very, very end user level. So every decision you make is having an impact, whether it's how that person's lifestyle changes, whether it's the regeneration of an area of Gloucester, and you start to look at the housing need and the housing crisis and affordable homes, whether that's how we look at improving the cityscape across the inner city so that our businesses can continue to thrive, whether it's major developments like the Forum, you mentioned Fast Host, coming into that new space, but moving from the city. They've started in the city, they've incubated, they've grown, and they've moved into the Forum, and they're now spreading their wings, and they've become a significant anchor. I get to see all of that, and I get to live and breathe all of that on a daily basis. So for me, head of place is fundamentally about being able to navigate a city or an area through change, but actually do it with the voice of every single person, every single business, influencing the way that ultimately their city changes. And that's such a powerful place to be, when you sit there and hear people say, this is what I want from my city, this is what I want from my business, please go away and make it happen. It's really humbling in very, very many ways. So yeah, I would say I've got the best role, wouldn't I? Let's be honest.
And it is such an important role as well as we go for the next phase of Gloucester's regeneration. Very, very quickly, Andrew, what's your background, please, mate? Where did you come from?
So I've got a very diverse background, actually. I'm from Yorkshire originally. I was not very good at school, I have to say. In fact, I was probably terrible at school, some might say, including my parents. But I joined the army at 16. And I basically spent nearly 7 years in the infantry for the Yorkshire Regiment. And then when I'd had enough of being shouted at and woken up at 5:30 in the morning, I then got married and still no, I'm joking. But I came out of that, and I went into the property and real estate sector, and I've traversed a career over the last 15 years in asset management and operations, commercial operations, development, and regeneration. And I've worked predominantly in the private sector. So I've come from some really big weeks. My last role was with the Crown Estate, and I was with them for 6 years. And then I moved into the public sector, and my main drive when interviewing for this role was I want to come and add real value to a city. And I live in Cirencester. I know Gloucester well. And so I was like, actually, this is a perfect opportunity. So yeah, I was really excited.
Okay, great stuff. Well, you can pop over to Mark's place. He is actually based over in Love Lane or Love Lane Industrial Estate there in Cirencester as well. Let's bring you back in, Mark. Can you tell us about the businesses? Because you've got Cirencester Fabrication Services. What else have you done?
Yeah,
I don't mean it like everything you've done, mate, but I know you bought 2 other companies. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so we're not standing still, as you say. Since we originally talked just over 4 and a bit years ago, almost, probably, Mark, we've doubled the size of the business. We started, there were 7 odd staff. There's now 16 staff that I have full time up here, and we're not standing still. We've created our own brand, our own design brand, where we both design some of our products and also have a design studio where we'll work with clients on what they want as a product. So rather than just coming in and prescribing something, we'll actually help design it with them. We have a large collaboration going on at the moment with another local Cirencester designer, Mr. Llewellyn Bowen himself. So we're doing a collaboration with him. And that's under the name Kyburn. So Kyebun. It is a small little town in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand, where I come from. So that's where the Kyburn name comes from. And part of it was around designing products that last. So one thing that I hate is a throwaway economy. And I see a lot of it around, especially outdoor things like fire pits and, plant supports. They're very seasonal. People buy them for a season, they rust, they fall apart, they throw them away, and it's not recycled or anything else. So the things that we design, we put guarantees and we design them to actually last, whether that be from 15 years on some things to a lifetime guarantee on other things. All of our products are designed to actually be sustained and last within the UK environment and the UK winters and then the wetness that we have. And also after that, because of the materials we use, they can be recycled as well if they need to. So it's a whole circular economy that we're trying to deal with that. And then the other business we purchased last year was Munton's traditional plant supports. And we had been making their plant supports for the last 3.5 years anyway. The owner of the company was looking to retire. It's a great tie-in to the outdoor lifestyle stuff that we're doing with Kyburn. And because we already built and fabricated all their stuff, it's the perfect combination for us. So we now really have 3 brands and are still growing.
Okay, fantastic. We're kind of running out of time for you, unfortunately, Mark. So I'd love to come back to you. There's just behind you in that picture. So do you make the archway in the grass in the garden picture there? Is that what you guys do as well?
Yeah, both sides. So that's the actual traditional plant support styles. So everything from archways and planters to big supports. If you think about your hydrangeas, they grow so big and have big heads. As soon as it's windy or wet, they'll just flop. This helps them all stand up. And then on this side is more of the design and art side that we do, the Kyburn side. This is a statue that I've made all out of metal and everything else, just one of the designs.
Okay, looks absolutely fantastic. I'll have to pop over and see you very soon, actually. Love to see a bit more about that.
The kettle is always on for you, Mark. You know that.
Fantastic, fantastic. When I've been delivering magazines, you've never been there, mate. That's the problem. Yeah. Anyway, right, okay. Athila, great to have you on the show. I'd love to talk to you. There's so many different facets of your biscuit as well, your business. How long have you been going now?
Well, the wine agent business is going 5.5 years, and Holy Spirits, which is the shop where I am, is completed 2 years in December.
I'm going to bring up the screen here actually, because I've got not that one there, but there we go. This is your this is your shop. Can you tell us about it, please? About the actual overall business. You can see the different wines and stuff. You're just based, isn't it, opposite the church in Nailsworth?
Exactly, which is partially the reasoning and the joke on the name, Holy Spirits. I may have upset a couple of Christians on the process, but I joke that I welcome sinners and I also convert people.
And so, what sort of things do you actually sell then? I've got some here. Is it all whiskey? Is it? I mean, that's
No,
your own
so
personal thing, isn't it? Have you got a collection of
whiskey is
400
this
whiskies?
major wall behind what I'm sitting now. So whiskey is physically in space is perhaps the biggest selection of what I've got, and then fine wines, and there is a small selection of other spirits such as rum, cognac, armagnac, calvados, gin. I used to be a sommelier, and I approach the selection that I've got in the shop very much the same way that I would in every other place that I've worked as a sommelier. You taste dozens, hundreds of different things, and you pick the best of certain examples and certain price brackets. So I don't have a lot of things in the shop, but what I have chosen is, well, in my view at least, the best of certain examples.
Was it a bit difficult to get people to buy into the concept? When you first came to Nailsworth, or I know there's quite a bit of money sloshing around, I don't mind the pun, in Nailsworth as well, in the Stroud Valleys. Did the business take off, or has it been a bit of a hard slog?
A bit of both. I have to say that I'm surprised at the amount of people that come in telling me that yes, they are whiskey drinkers, and also the profile that I thought it was going to be is very different than the actual profile of people that come in. The amount of couples that come in and both of them drink, and they have different styles that they drink and so on. So there is perhaps a bigger geographical style of people that I thought there was going to be. I did think that I was going to be selling a lot more wine than whiskey. It's the other way around. It's a lot more whiskey than wine. Partially because there are a number of other wine businesses nearby, and there isn't a whiskey-focused business anywhere near, really. The nearest, perhaps, would be in Bath or Bristol. And funny enough, I've got now clients that are coming from Bath and Bristol this way because they've seen what I've got, and I try to specialize in things that no one else does.
I was going to say that the wine merchants around you is quite a lot actually in Nailsworth, isn't it? I mean, it's become a bit of a mecca
it's
for wine.
Probably the biggest wine merchant per capita in the country.
So quickly, how would you pick a wine for me? What's the starting process? Very quickly. I know you probably haven't got a bit unfair, perhaps.
No, I don't know.
So
I try to understand. Everyone's palate is on a journey. I try to understand how much you know and how much you don't know without trying to say that you don't know about certain things. But I try to understand what is it that you like. And let's say that you tell me that, I love my Argentina Malbec and I love my New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, great. It tells me that you are at a certain point in your journey. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, you're talking about a style that is quite fresh, a little bit fruity, but a style of wine that it's more to refresh your palate than really to accompany food or anything like that. So an aperitif white, if you may, and I'll try to give something on that style. On the red side, if it's a Malbec, then okay, you want a big, juicy red, but something that has relatively low acidity, something that is just easy for you to have lots of. So it's understanding the palate of the individual and trying to pair the bottles that will go with it.
Okay, sounds great. I'll probably have to pop in and see you as well. I was with someone yesterday actually who knows you quite well, but I'll talk to you about that off camera after this show as well. Unfortunately, guys, that's all we've got time for today. I'd just like to thank my wonderful panel. One second, I've forgotten the pick of the punchlines. Goodness, that ending. Sam, what you picked out from punchlines? We're running out of time though, so we'll have to do
very
this quite
quickly. I loved your video, the fast hosts. I thought it was amazing. We've all been watching the forum emerge. We've all been looking at that building, intrigued about what's going on inside. You went right inside it. You got a real feel for the place. I loved even looking at the views out the windows when you were talking to people and just thinking it was a bit misty the day you went in, but when it's going to be sunshine, it's going to be brilliant. It didn't feel like Gloucester. So for Andrew with his new role as head of place, I mean, that is an amazing testimony to what Gloucester can become. So really, really impressed with that video. Great stuff.
Thanks very much. I would just like to say, Andrew, while I've got you on camera here, please, please, please knock down the station house. It's going to be that's the one thing you could do. If you could do anything to achieve anything in Gloucester at the moment, is knock that station house down and build something spanky so when you can at the train station. Okay, Andrew, what's your pick of the punchlines, please?
Well, my pick, I'll echo Sam's quickly on Fast Host. Absolutely delighted to welcome them into the forum. Absolutely leading the way in digital tech and innovation, and I'm really excited to see what Fast Host do in terms of continuing to add that energy and innovation. But my pick as a supplementary is one very close to my heart. Is in Cirencester. You did a piece on the vintage shop in Cirencester. And they're going through a planning application now to try and upscale their brand, etc. But actually, it's more of a shout out to them because they're exactly what Cirencester needs. That kind of authentic vintage style retail. It's a great shop, and I go in every time I go into Cirencester and try to look like I can be 21 again, and I can't. But I am going to buy a coat from there that I've had my eye on for the best part of 4 weeks. So I thought that was a great punchline story, and I'm going to watch them grow.
And I absolutely love Cirencester, by the way. We go there quite a lot as well. Okay, Mark, what have you picked out from Punch, please?
Mine's a Cirencester story as well. It's Friday, it's takeaway night. Cirencester fish and chip shop in the top 50 UK fish and chip shops, Malt and Anchor, and it's the only one in Gloucestershire that's actually made it into that from the Fry magazine.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Athila. Athila. Thanks very much.
First time.
What have you picked out for pick of the punchlines, please?
Well, it's the one that, the title is Staring Down the Barrel, Cameras Plea for Pubs in Peril. And you talk about basically the pub rescue initiatives and talks a little bit about the community in Nimsfield looking to buy the Rose and Crown, which actually was one of my favorite pubs after I moved to this area. The people that were managing before did a pretty good job in bringing the standard of food and service and everything else to a nice place. And it was a shame that they've gone. But it's lovely to see that community coming together, being part of the local business scene, the idea of supporting local, buying local, and literally becoming part of your local is it's something that perhaps should not only happen to pubs, but for people to understand better how vital it is that, especially with small businesses, that they become a part of it in a way.
I think we're all on the same page there. We all support local, and that's the way that town centres are going to make it. Well, I just want to say thank you. My pick of the punchlines, by the way, has to be the Fast House. It's such a £107 million development. It used to be a crappy old bus station that people used to smell of wee, and drugs and stuff like that. Now there it is, a big spanking building. I just want to say also, it is a technical, but it's a technology company, which is very exciting. And when I went there, what really struck me was the buzz of the place. It had a real energy, a real drive. It was not just beautifully designed and put together, and you are right, the views, but that real sheer buzz. And I think you're going to have that many people running around the city centre since the university comes in. Oh my goodness. I think Gloucester's going to be skyrocketing. Anyway, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. I'd just like to thank my wonderful panel for today. Take the time. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back again next week. But until then, remember, it's all in the punchline. Bye, everybody.